Let's talk to Mike Neville, retired Scotland Yard Detective Chief Inspector. Mike, very good morning to you. We're going to talk a little bit
Mike,
about...
happy St George's Day.
Yeah, and a happy St George's Day to you. We're going to talk a little bit in a minute about the police and how they've changed the vetting business that they do on prospective members of the constabularies up and down the country. But I just wanted to ask you, I don't know if you had a chance to see that video we played out earlier of these migrants who appear to be living underneath Westway, which is a well-known sort of road that goes over Maida Vale. They appear to be living there in tents. The people that are living near them have said to us that, you know, they're there all the time. They've been there for for ages. They have barbecues. They menace young women if they're walking around that particular area. They appear to be left alone. The council have apparently tried to house them. They don't want housing. What are you going to do with that? And is it something that's happening a lot now?
Well, I saw similar footage around Hyde Park and all, city areas. This is not unusual. You see campsites sort of set up on the embankments in London. It's just, and as you say, these people really don't want housing or whatever. They're happy to have set up these communes. And we always seem to follow the states. And if you look at cities like San Francisco in the United States and California, it is an absolute mess. It is utterly crime-ridden. A foolish left-wing government has allowed crime to flourish, to decriminalise things like shoplifting. And all these things do, Mike, is drag the country down. You know, that comment you had from a guy who lived in London, when people return to London, like I do as a police officer there for nearly 3 decades, all you see is change around you, and none of that change is good. Yeah. It's decaying, crime is everywhere. And the trouble is with society, I always say this, if people think working for a living and paying for things in a shop is a stupid idea because everybody else is getting away with not doing those things, then society starts to break down, and it's just a mess. We have no control who's coming on it in this country, and seemingly we have no control on what they do when they get here.
That's the problem, isn't it? And you're right, because people were saying that there's an awful lot of shoplifting in the area, mostly carried out by these characters who do it sort of on a daily basis without fear or favour. And obviously they're quite young, fit men. They're quite dangerous looking. They're not very frightened of anybody, it would seem. I don't know what the police involvement is likely to be in a situation like that, but I mean, if the council have offered them housing and haven't been able to get them to take it, have the police not got the ability to go and just arrest them and say, well, if you can identify who you are, that would be good, but if you can't, I'm afraid we're going to take you in?
Well, there's no crime of being anonymous, really. So what the police could do, of course, is target them for committing crime, like the shoplifting.
Right.
You know, these people they won't be doing one, Mike. They'll be doing 10 a day.
Yeah.
You know, these people will be stealing high-value things like meat, alcohol, and the like. They need to be working with local shopkeepers, using the CCTV to identify them, not for one crime. The trick is to get them for 10 crimes. Because you get them for 10 crimes, they're more likely to get locked up. But these things need to be broken up. The council need to look at the bylaws. What are the bylaws about using that area as a sort of tented city? Right. There's probably some bylaws which prevent that. But what it means is the council, the police, all have to work together to come up with a plan rather than sort of having half a go themselves and achieving not much really.
Exactly right. So there's no crime of sort of vagrancy or, you know, putting up a tent in an area which is not residential or something like that?
A lot of these crimes came from after the Napoleonic Wars, the Vagrancy Act of 1824, and a lot of these were repealed. For all good reason, really. We don't want to vilify people for being what we used to call a tramp and things like that. But the trouble is they've got rid of these laws, and then the problem just brings itself back. And as I say, the key thing is all those agencies working together to close this down and being ready one day to move in, move them out, evict them, and get rid of all those tents and put them somewhere, saying, well, you've been offered fair accommodation here. But what it does is, as I said, it drags down the area, it sends a message, and the people who are the most vulnerable to this, Mike, is women and girls, because a lot of these characters come from countries where the attitude to women is very, very poor. They're fourth-class citizens. And this is where the danger comes of sexual and indecent assaults.
Yes, and that is another thing that you would expect the government to clamp down on. They talk a lot about, you know, wanting to protect women and girls, wanting to safeguard them all the time, and yet just literally, you know, a stone's throw away from a road that goes right down towards Parliament, they don't want to stop it happening.
Well, what's the problem there? You see, you've got two left-wing ideologies clashing. Because what you've got is, it makes common sense, doesn't it? We should protect women and girls. That really does. But then they've got the real fear that we might upset immigrants and say something that's against their culture. And so these two things just cannot compute with these MPs. And so this is why you get these awful mess in society where things are not dealt with properly.
Yeah, it is shocking. Let's talk a little bit about the Home Office and the new background inspection business coming up from May the 14th. It says here, police who fail vetting checks will be booted out of the police automatically from next month. Now, this is vetting once they're in the police rather than before they join?
Absolutely. So you're vetted before you wait. The trouble with a lot of this is people weren't vetted, as we saw with Wayne Couzens when he transferred from one police force to another. It wasn't done, and this was strictly tied up after the Wayne Couzens dreadful man who should be hanged, in my view. But it's when people are in the police and then they fail vetting. Yeah. And there's a recent case was brought up, and I knew the officer engaged. He actually worked for me for a while. What the thing is that this man has never been found guilty of anything. Right. And what they're saying is basically there's no smoke without fire, so you're going to be dismissed. Now, in some cases, you can look at an officer and think that they are really dreadful. There's something highly suspicious here. Right. And Sir Robert Mark said a good police force is one that catches more crooks than it employs. Yes. So there's always going to be bad apples. My concern is, Mike, is if I was an organised crime gang and I wanted to get rid of a good officer who was going to catch me, I would I would pay people to make all sorts of allegations. So my question is, how are we going to make sure that officers are not targeted by false allegations? Because bearing in mind, it's all right, people are found guilty, but it's when people make several allegations which are never proved, and then they can say, well, those 7 things come together. And my final thoughts on this is, I will agree to it if the MPs will submit themselves to the same vetting, and they can't be an MP if they fail vetting as well. Yes, I think that would be sensible. That would probably keep quite a lot of the MPs out of Parliament as well, I could imagine, given some of the things that we don't even know that go on. But, I mean, will this make the police better run? Will it make the police a better and more reliable force? What you only got, you got less than, I think, in the Metropolitan Police, which is 30,000 officers. You're talking about 40 officers. So getting rid of it, if there are 40 bad apples and they got rid of, and they are very, very bad and it's proved, then that's a good thing for the public. But it's not going to make a massive difference, to you as a viewer or a listener when your house is burgled or somebody's attacked or your property is stolen. And this is really where the police need to focus. The police need to get to this back to basics thing where they're focusing on those things that impact on us all. As we discussed in the previous part of the discussion, getting rid of people who are a commune which is really built on theft and stealing and possibly targeting women. These are the areas that the police need to focus on. But everything is that these things are all a distraction which drags senior officers away from focuses on burglary, robbers and thieves. Absolutely right. Good to talk to you. Mike Neville, thanks very much indeed. Retired Scotland Yard Detective Chief Inspector there with his take on what's going on there on the mean streets of Britain.